Hi, this is Tom Needham, and you are listening to the sounds of film. And I'm very excited to have on the program today the host of the enormously popular Mel K show. She's also the author of an upcoming book called Americans Anonymous Restoring Power to the People, One Citizen at a Time. Mel, thank you so much for joining us today on the Sounds of Film.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yeah. I'm a real fan of your podcast. I find you
Thank
to be
you.
a very interesting person because you have such an interesting arc. I know you went to NYU a long time ago, and as
hmm
I mentioned, this show is called The Sounds of Film, and I know you have a history where you were in Hollywood, and you've really evolved into the viewpoints that you have today that you present on the show. So I was wondering if you could give a little introduction to our audience in terms of who you are and what's happened over your life.
Okay, sure. Well, I grew up outside of Philadelphia with a really great family, very interested in education and history. My dad was a hardcore Republican, Rush Limbaugh fan. My mom, when I was growing up, was a Democrat. So I got both sides. They always worked. I have older sisters, are 7 and 8 years older. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer. So I had all these minds around me, and I absorbed a lot. And I was very blessed to end up going to NYU. I studied journalism, and then I went back for film. And what I did that for the last 22 or for 22 years in LA was I specialized in something pretty unique, which is my niche was I created film and TV based on true history, a lot of it uncovering true history, but I fictionalized it. And that became kind of the melding of journalism and deep research and film and creativity. But in doing that, it required, in order, as this is a film show, in order to create an environment on screen that really mirrors actual history, you have to really do a lot of research digging into not just what happened at the time. And, I've written screenplays about the expatriates in the south of France at World War I, our exit from Saigon. I wrote a big script about Hannah Arendt covering the Eichmann trial in Jerusalem. So every one of these projects took me months and months researching not just what happened at the time, but what was the culture, what was society, what was in the newspapers, how did people dress, what did they eat, what was the temperature, how were kids being educated, and whatever the case may be. Over these years of picking different times in history that I felt we were not getting the full story on, a group of people basically kept coming up, no matter what history decade we're talking about. I'm led back to the same bankers and multinational corporations and people that were influential in foreign policy, and they seem to never change. And the project that informed me the most, also the person that's most informed my worldview, is Hannah Arendt. And I really put a lot of time into the screenplay about her covering for the New Yorker Eichmann in Jerusalem, which led me to really delve into Germany in the 30s, not at the end of the war, but before the war started. I'm really looking at what was the Third Reich? What were their goals? What was happening? How did it systematically happen? And what led me to do what I am now. So I spent all this time in Hollywood, and as you know, every agent would say to me two things: you don't talk about uh, politics, you don't talk about religion. You don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, but politics especially. But I did find a group of people in my time in Hollywood that were on my side, that are conservatives. They're not open about it. Some are, but most aren't. And so, maybe I didn't talk about it where I was, but I was very obsessed with Hannah Arendt. I read all her books. I understand totalitarianism. She wrote the main book, I think the best book on it. And frankly, when COVID started, I had seen some signs. I knew something was going to happen from months before. There were some things in the financial world that I thought were very shady and reminded me of different times in history where the powers that be, I call them the parent company, but global public-private partnership, or, some people call it the one world government, but, it's evolved. But I saw some of the stuff that was happening early in COVID was very similar to what was happening in Germany in the 30s. And it was also during a time of a virus known as typhus. and that they were encouraging people to move into ghettos to protect the people that were not suffering from typhus. And as most people know, Auschwitz was presented as a quarantine camp for people that were suffering from typhus or under the threat. And it was the right thing to do for everyone else to protect other people. You know, it was guised in the same way. A lot of the same things were happening. And then all the world started talking. I had years been looking at not just BlackRock and Larry Fink, but also the World Economic Forum. And when I saw Klaus Schwab put out the book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, I said, this is what this is about. And I started doing the Mel K show the day they shut down New York. I was still working on a TV show at the time. And I said, you know what? I really want to connect the history then to what they're doing now and warn people that this is a slow burn to totalitarianism, because I think the people that are running this on a global scale, they have a plan. The plan is Agenda 2030. This is how they're going to pull it off. And frankly, that led me to where I am now and just kind of fearlessly telling the truth. You know, somebody like me, I didn't expect the purge that happened when COVID hit, and I had on Dr. Zelenko, I had on Dr. Stella, I had on all the frontline doctors, Dr. McCullough, and I amassed from the show on YouTube 100,000 subscribers in a pretty short time. It was extraordinary. I didn't even know that. First, I got demonetized. Then I woke up one day, my channel was gone with no chance to appeal. And I thought, oh my God, this is so crazy. I can't believe what's going on. Luckily, I jumped right to Rumble before anyone even probably heard of it and other places. But when I saw the censorship starting and the purging of voices that were telling the truth and offering options and trying to save lives, I realized we were in serious danger, and that again, this same group of people that from World War One that tried the League of Nations, World War Two, the fraud that is the UN. Oh wow, they are trying it again. This is a world movement to consolidate power in the hands of this group of people again, and that's how the show evolved. It was following that trajectory to where we are now.
Can I ask you? It seems like you must have a good understanding from some people in your life, from going to NYU, from being out in Hollywood, um, the way liberals think. In particular, you seem concerned about totalitarian governments. And I would guess that probably if you speak to anyone who's liberal or conservative, most people would say they're concerned about that. In fact, you see a lot of people who say that they're concerned that another Trump presidency could lead to something like that. They say stuff like that all the time. I also go back to years ago, at one point, I was a big fan of the movie, the documentary, The Corporation, which
Hmm.
tried to give this vision where we're heading in the future that corporations would have more power as we move forward in the future than even governments. And I've heard you talk about some similar issues. So what I was wondering is, and that was a pretty liberal film, Chomsky and everybody was in it, Michael Moore. Why do you think that there's this difference of opinion today between a lot of conservatives and liberals in terms of where they see the danger when everyone says they don't want that kind of future in government?
Okay, well, first, if you watch the show, I don't believe that there's a left or right or Republican and Democrat party
Right.
at all in America right now. I don't think there has been for a very long time. I frankly believe that our country had a coup in 1963 with the murder of JFK, and we're still in the cover-up stage of that all these years later, and it's all encompassing. And I fully agree that what we are dealing with is actually a global public-private partnership that runs America like a parent company, and they have captured our nation and many other nations. They don't hide it. The meshing and the melding of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, all the way back to Kofi Annan, a lot of the other tentacles that I call the octopus of global control, all the way up to the Bank of International Settlements, have been working the long game to do what they're doing now. And like I said earlier, I have a lot of problems with Larry Fink and BlackRock, mainly because not only does he run trillions of dollars in U.S. taxpayers' pension funds, and is investing in Chinese Communist Party businesses and military industrial complex and helping them build the EV plant in Mexico and doing all kinds of things with carbon capture. He also is on the board of the World Economic Forum and is the architect of the Great Reset and the ESG score. He's also on the board of the Council of Foreign Relations, which believes that a super class of elite basically bankers, billionaires, and businessmen should be running this country. That the auto determination, as per our founding, doesn't work, and it's said in many documents from the beginning of the creation of the Council of Foreign Relations. And on top of that, BlackRock is the only company apparently that can function freely with the Chinese Communist Party in China. So I look at all of that, and then I look at 6 months before COVID, Larry Fink had an event in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I call it the Going Direct event. And they all signed on in 2015 to Agenda 2030. No American citizen knew what it was. Nobody paid for it. I mean, nobody voted for it. Barack Obama signed us onto it. Agenda 2030 is a global governance model that replaces nation states. It uses a fraud of 17 sustainable development goals. It is sustainable for the globalist billionaire oligarchy, public-private partnership to maintain power. It has nothing to do with us or the planet or anything else. This is a long game. It was Agenda 21, changed to Agenda 2030. Barack signs us onto it in 2015. I believe at that point, all the multinational corporations that we know as American companies, which are not American companies, they are global companies, they realized that their future growth and they invested their future, their money, their legacies, everything in a future model where the US is displaced as the economy of the world or running the world, because to them, the consumers, 1.6 billion in India, 1.8 billion in China, are much more important to these people, the global public-private partnership. They also wanted to capture all natural resources, which included obviously oil and gas and other things, to make sure that they control the markets all over the world in terms of industrialization and growth and all of that. So that's back. So they've been working towards that since. And then 6 months before COVID, Larry Fink has a meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He makes a speech, and it's called Going Direct. And he's telling all the bankers of the world and all the board members that are on the global public-private partnership that the governments of the world are failing, and that what is going to happen is that the bankers and the corporations are going to have to go direct to the people. Meaning, and he says it in the speech, we are going to have to control behavior of the masses, and basically the governments work for us. Well, what is going on in America now that people have to understand is there aren't two sides, but there is an operation, a color revolution that was launched in, I believe, actively launched by Obama around 2013, 2014 and forward. And of course, I believe at this point, both Bushes, Obama, Clinton, Biden are all in on the global governance model, the global public-private partnership, stakeholders rather than nations. And that what happened was thinking, I believe it was a pandemic. I believe that all of that transferred basically overnight as soon as COVID was unleashed upon us. And they've taken advantage of that to move forward Agenda 2030 in all ways. Agenda 2030 only works if they get all nations and all people onto a digital public infrastructure from birth to death. It is a model that they've created over decades. It is the same exact end goal. If you did study what the Third Reich's end goal was, had they had the digital public infrastructure, satellites, track and trace surveillance, the Patriot Act, a bunch of other things, they might have achieved it. Well, these people have these tools now, and they know that they do. And the only thing that they need are the American people to walk into it willingly. So a lot of what we're dealing with is dividing us by race, by religion, by sex, by color, by all of that. So we don't see the actual end goal, which is the end of the sovereign nation known as the United States. But frankly, if you read Agenda 2030, it's the end of all nation states. They've created this lie about everything's global, therefore you need a global government. So we have global warming, we have global pandemics, we have global wars, we have global. So they're saying to us, listen, transfer all of your wealth, trillions of dollars, to us over here in Davos and Brussels, and then we'll put it out equally to all the world. The only thing you have to do is everyone has to be on a global digital ID, which they tried to roll out under the guise of COVID World Health Organization ID. Well, don't forget, these people also control the World Health Organization, the UNESCO, which is the poison that is happening to our schools. They control the IPCC, which is where the fraud of the human caused climate change. This is actually those people that are causing the climate issues, and then especially with the wars, and then coming back and saying we have to control the humans. This includes a global digital ID, a global digital passport, the keyword being global. And what the goal is like Trump says, they're not after me, they're after you, I'm in the way. That's in terms of psychological demoralization, dehumanization, everything Yuri Bezmenov warned us about in the 80s. But what they have now going on is that they have to convince the American people that the only way forward is for all of us to, for our own good, of course, to allow full track and trace surveillance, even worse than what the unconstitutional Patriot Act has done, and do it on a global scale because they have to protect the global environment rather than nation states. It's very similar if you really read it and understand what they're saying. They are talking about something like Pan Am and the wards in Hunger Games.
Mm.
It reads exactly like that. And these people do function as if they are a superior class of people. That's what you do need to understand that this is real. So what I see right now happening in America is they are dividing us when we are all on the same side. There are not two sides when it comes to the people of the United States of America. And frankly, I say they're not after America, they're after the world, and America is in the way because of our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our history of fighting bullies. And frankly, we're exactly where we were with the Declaration of Independence, but this time it's a parent company of a global public-private partnership that's sitting above our government and has captured our government. And frankly, the unconstitutional intelligence branch, DHS, and all of them that came out of the unconstitutional deceptive Patriot Act, which was written before 9/11 and implemented as if it was for 9/11, has turned our country into a big brother surveillance state that is coordinating with the Five Eyes nations and the NATO nations to basically forward this agenda so that America, because without America, they cannot achieve this. They need the American people on board or it does not work. And there's a desperation right now. And frankly, most people don't understand that Donald Trump knew this. He's not articulating it as I wish he would, but he took us out of the World Health Organization. He took us out of UNESCO. He pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords. He pulled us out of the Migration Pact. He ended NAFTA. This was chipping away at the trillions and trillions of dollars these people wanted in their pockets, centralized for Agenda 2030. So frankly, the election of 2024 has nothing to do with Biden or Donald Trump. Frankly, Donald Trump is actually sanding the gears to the globalist movement to take over all power. But it is, again, Joe Biden in 2023 did an event at the White House where he said his goals are for by 2030 to achieve Agenda 2030. And he delineated about $3 trillion that were all going into these globalist NGOs, these global funds connected to the UN, all of this global stuff, global infrastructure. In the infrastructure bill, there's the technology for ledger technology and blockchain technology for identification for us. In every single executive order he dropped in the first month, the 30 executive orders, they were all to get Agenda 30 back on track. And in September 2023, he said, Barack Obama signed us onto Agenda 2030 in 2015, and by 2030, I am going to achieve it. I am going to lead the world into the future with Agenda 2030. So what we are dealing with now is a fraud perpetrated among the people of the United States of America to fight each other to the death if we must. They're encouraging a civil war. They're encouraging a world war leading to nuclear war. Why? Because in the aftermath of that war, like every war, they can consolidate power a lot more easily and get us all desperate enough to say, fine, we surrender. We'll do whatever it takes, just end the chaos. We need to realize in America right now, if you are for freedom and liberty and auto-determination, you are on the same side, okay? Because if we lose that, they might right now be using these liberals as useful idiots, and all the NGOs that these globalist billionaires fund are the ones that are perpetrating this fraud. But at the end of the day, we're going to all have to be on that digital public infrastructure. And they're doing it by dividing us now, making us think one way or the other. Joe Biden is a direct hit to Agenda 2030. And if people don't fully understand that, they have to educate themselves. I don't care if you love or hate Donald Trump. I know that he is our only chance for 4 years to stop some of this escalation to the end of sovereignty for not just America and the world. And America right now is actually standing up for freedom all over the world. Everyone in the rest of the world knows if the American people fall for this, they have no shot.
Mel, wow, you've said a lot. um, can you just? I know there are some people that are listening right now that are saying this sounds like a conspiracy. They're hearing you use the word globalist. Can you just address these two words? I know these are words that have been purposely made to hurt people speaking about some of the issues that you're talking about. But can you just address what some people are probably thinking right now about those words?
Yes, sure. Sure, sure. Well, first and foremost, I want people to know on the melkshow.com, I have a resource page where I collect, and a lot of stuff's being scraped from the internet right now that is true, but I collect their documents. So when I collect documents, I collect them from the Bank of International Settlements or from the UN or from the World Economic Forum or from the IMF. They all say the same thing, including NATO. They all say the same thing. It is all about ending nation states. So ending nation states means ending sovereignty of nations. All you have to do, and what I'd say to anyone that thinks that, is go to WeForum, WEFORUM.org. That is the World Economic Forum. They are the front runners of the PR campaign for the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the Great Reset, and put in global governance. Okay, and you're going to see thousands of articles come up from all of the globalist entities that are all connected to this global public-private partnership. That's what it's called, even on their own website. They call themselves stakeholders. They are corporations and banks that believe that they should be running above governments, and they lay it out with their young global leaders. As most people have seen Klaus Schwab say, he's infiltrated all of the governments, including ours. And you have to remember also, Klaus Schwab was his father was a big Nazi. He was at Harvard, recruited by Henry Kissinger, who was recruiting for the CIA to create the World Economic Forum to start this process of basically turning the world into wards rather than nation states. The EU is the first one. So first you have to educate yourself on what is Agenda 2030 and what is global governance from their mouth. Don't take it from me. Second, you have to understand the CIA created the conspiracy theorist moniker of being crazy for anyone who didn't believe the Warren Report. The Warren Report is a fraud. It's always been, it will always be. And the bottom line is Dulles and Ford and all these people that were on the Warren Commission all knew it. And we're still waiting 60 years later to hear the absolute truth. And they don't want us to know it. Why? So conspiracy theorists created by the CIA to discredit anyone that questioned the official story of the murder of JFK, and then go to weforum.org or go to the UN, Our Common Agenda, or go to anyone that has an Agenda 2030 and read what it is. I am telling you right now that once people take the next step of educating themselves, there will be a aha moment and they will realize this is a consolidation of all the money, all the natural resources on planet Earth into the hands of a very small group of people that have been running the international banking cartel for 100 years. And
What
if you go back to that and you do it yourself, you can't not see it. And then if you start from there, then you say, well, who's running America? I would say we know their names, but I would start at the top and say, what is BlackRock and how much of America does it own? And then who is running it and what are their contacts and who are they connected to? And then follow the conferences. It really is a model that is very plain to see if you just do your own work.
what would it take in terms of an event or something happening in the world in order for people from different nations to be willing and wanting to give up their sovereignty? Or is it
Well,
just going to
that's
be
what I think that is sadly the escalation to a nuclear event of some sort. I believe these people already have contingency for themselves and their families. I've really, people go to my website, they'll see a lot of stuff there, and I've really narrowed it down to about 20,000 people that want to decide for 8 billion people what the future looks like. And it's a dystopian nightmare for most of us and Pan Am for them. So what it will take is for people to realize that that is what is going on. Second, it'll take to understand that Washington, D.C. is a fully captured entity, that there is no, in my opinion, There is no fixing the level of corruption and deception and blackmail and bribery and that has been happening there. We have a lot of things that have happened here, but we are all, every American citizen right now is fully tracked, traced, and surveilled, violating the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and many other things. We do need to have an effort to repeal the Patriot Act and to really look at the intelligence community created out of it because it's running like a fourth branch that has captured the other three and is threatening everyone in this nation without oversight. It was weaponized by Holder and Obama through the National Security Division of the DOJ. And right now they might be going after anti-government, anti-authority, MAGA people and January 6th people. But believe me, it is weaponized to go after anyone that ideologically doesn't agree with the people in power. Also, the whole lawfare, everything that's happening to Donald Trump and all of the lawyers that question the election or anything else, that is also being run by the parent company. So what we need to do is remember, A, the 10th Amendment is our friend and our way out of this. We have to start in every single county, in every single state, being proactive and taking all of this personally. We have to really be honest. How has our local community been infiltrated by the Sustainable Development Goals in the UN, by surveillance, track and trace surveillance? Follow who is doing this in your community. Smart cities, Internet of Body, Internet of Things, smart homes, all of that. Where's the data going? Because the control, the global public infrastructure that they created to achieve this goal, this consolidation of power into the hands of the very few global billionaires, is really about your data. It is controlling you through your data. So no, it's not cool to put your hand down at Whole Foods and have that, or give your eye scans at the airport, or any of that. That should all be uh, unacceptable to Americans. We've given them the ability to have a license, a social security card, and a birth certificate. Beyond that, the government is not entitled to any Americans' personal data or information under any circumstance without a warrant and without probable cause. Well, all of that was thrown out the window after 9/11 and the Patriot Act. And we have to be very honest. Lobbying is legalized bribery that is only allowed in Washington, D.C. Lobbying is the number one thing that has taken our voice and our vote away. Also, the entire get out the vote thing, believe me, I trace these people, I trace the money. It is all funded by the same people running the controlled demolition of America, this globalist public-private partnership. They don't want any of our votes to count. They don't want any of us to vote. It's not Republican and Democrat. They want to decide who's in office. They want to decide who's on your city council, who's on your school board. They want full control, and they've infiltrated everywhere, be it George Soros with the ABA and with all of the defund the police and all of the DAs. But not just that. There's many different layers to this, but you can find them if you just want to. There's many ways that we can fight back, but it's got to be local. It's got to be county. You've got to get out there. I know nobody wants to go from work to city council meetings or to county commissioner meetings or to call their sheriff and say, what's your plan if X happens? But we have to do that. It's our fault. This is not about America being captured by a global public-private partnership because we didn't see it. We weren't looking, we were being distracted, but we are looking now. And I do believe with the open border, with the escalation to war, with the $200 billion that have gone to the World Bank, not to Ukraine, to the World Bank to be distributed from there, with all the money for climate change also going to the World Bank to be distributed by there, we have to ask ourselves, well, who benefits? Because we certainly aren't, not our country, not any other country. The whole thing, war on oil and gas, this is about taking over all natural resources and not having freedom at all to do anything. So we have to decide. It's not about Joe Biden and Trump. It is about, do you still want the United States that are the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and auto determination and investments in this country's infrastructure and industry and creativity and everything? Or do you want to become a cog in a globalist wheel of global governance Agenda 2030? Those are your two options in 2024. Trump is a 4-year president, but to me, he's sand in the gears of that. So, I would ask people to maybe put aside that these two people are, dividing us, that it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with every individual American and what they want for this country in the future.
I know you have a book coming out, and we
Yeah.
don't have too much more time. But I've also heard you say on your show that you're actually optimistic. I know people are going to find that hard to believe after what you just said, but I know you do offer solutions. You just mentioned some of the things that need to be done. What can we expect in your book, and what are we going to be hearing from you moving forward on your show?
Well, for me, I have watched what's happened. I've been in 30 states. I've spoken all over the country since 2015, and I travel by car and I meet a lot of people all over the country. And about 20 something years ago, I went through recovery in Hollywood, and I had never even imagined that there was a situation where you could be hit at rock bottom. You could think, my life's unmanageable. There's nothing I can do, and somebody says, come with me to this, leave your ego outside, come and humbly, look, there's people here that have answers, and go into a room full of people from all walks of life, from billion-dollar producers to homeless crack addicts from Hollywood Boulevard. And suddenly you walk through that door, and everybody in that room knows that there's a problem and that they are the problem. And they want to fix that problem from the inside out using God and fellowship and tools. And so about 2 years ago, I thought, God, the media and everyone, they're making everything so toxic. They've got everyone addicted to conflict and chaos. People aren't, when did politics become such a part of our everyday life? I just want the politicians to do their job and stay out of my life. I don't want to not like my neighbor because they're voting for somebody else. How insane. And I've just watched it get worse. And I thought the only solution in my mind, again, I feel like America has hit rock bottom. Our country has become unmanageable. And the only answer is for us to leave our R's and D's and L's outside, walk into a room that's based on freedom, liberty, the golden rule, and solutions, and say, okay, this is my community. Like when I was little, I had Neighborhood Watch. I proposed to have Freedom Watch groups all over the country that are based on individual liberty, individual sovereignty, and making our communities better, one neighborhood, one community, one county at a time. And I put a lot of things in there about that. But first and foremost, you have to humble yourself to realize we were given a great experiment in America. And as Ben Franklin warned, we have a republic if we can keep it. But the problem is, it also required eternal vigilance by the citizens. And we have been purposely, by Hollywood, the media, the politicians, distracted that our country is ours. We have to take personal responsibility for the future of this nation. Every single citizen has a role to play and needs to find their God-given talent and everything inside. I don't care what you did in the past. If you're willing to walk through the door humbly and say, you know what, I've had it. I just want to come together and find positive solutions for myself and my country and my future. Forget the collective. I'm an individual, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and work with anyone who wants to solve and make a better future for America and realizes the model that they gave us is broken. Well, that's the way to do it. And I encourage everyone to start their own groups and find like-minded people, we the people groups, liberty groups. Forget R&D, forget left and right. It's not real anymore. What is real is that the American people are the answer, not just for America, but for the world to remain free.
We've been speaking with Mel K. She's the host of the Mel K Show, and she has an upcoming book called Americans Anonymous: Restoring Power to the People, One Citizen at a Time. Mel, where can people go to find out about all your work?
Okay, well, the melkshow.com. And for anyone out there that's never heard a lot of this stuff, I have a free resource page, and you could spend hours on there. Just find one topic that you heard today and say, I'm going to look that up, and do your own research, because I want everyone to become the Paul Revere of their neighborhoods, which has a lot to do with what my book's about, is empowering everyone to be, the source of information, real information for their neighbors and friends. And so the melkshow.com is where you can find that resource page and everything else. And I have a show every single night, a new show, a new guest, smarter than me often, on Rumble. If you're not on Rumble, I strongly suggest joining there, because the censorship is going to heat up heavily really soon. And anywhere you can find anything, except for I am not on Telegram or YouTube. There are many fake channels there, but everywhere else you can find me, the Mel K Show. And I love to have people join over there and send me emails. You can ask me questions also on the website at Ask Mel, and I'll answer you right back. And I appreciate you having me. And I hope everyone out there realizes there's not two sides. We're in an extraordinary, unprecedented time in America, and it's time for the American people to take back their country.
Mel, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.